tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
I don't feel good at all, but I just take day by day and night by night and see what happens.
Worry over the incoming hotter, drier weather as crews try to battle the out-of-control Keremeos fire. Also, booting out the barge. Work begins to dismantle the infamous English Bay eyesore.
You've got a bigger chest, it can start to get painful.
Once a taboo topic, sports bras are now in the spotlight. Why it's encouraging for women's health.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. There's worry tonight about higher temperatures and drier weather as crews try to get a handle on the Keremeos fire. It's forced more than 500 properties to evacuate and 1,000 more to go on alert. It's also caused the closure of part of Highway 3A. As Anita Bathe reports, the blaze is at least 15 times the size of Stanley Park.
Scared.
Just 60 minutes is all Cheryl Gorder had to flee her home.
I mean, we've been preparing the last few days, but when it comes down to it and they say you're evacuating, you've got an hour, then the stress comes.
Heavy smoke billows up to the sky. This massive fire forced the evacuation of our entire small town of Olalla and outlying rural parts like Keremeos.
I'm missing my garden right now. I'm a real flower girl.
But there is some relief. A creek nearby stands between the blaze and Olalla, and so far homes have been spared.
Fire did get close, but we were successful keeping it on the hill.
Winds have been pushing flames downhill toward the communities, leading to the closure of Highway 3A through Olalla and Keremeos. Crews are withstanding the steep terrain, trying to get a grip on the flames, like planned burns on bushes, shrubs, and trees.
With burning, basically, we were able to remove the fuel before the fire gets there, which allows us to create containment.
The Keremeos Creek fire is almost 15 times the size of Stanley Park. Residents like Lauren Hunter are holding on to hope.
My wife passed a month ago, so I'm looking after our dog, and I'm just hoping our home doesn't burn down. You bet, lots of memories.
Bucket by bucket of water, 13 helicopters attack from the air. Hundreds of firefighters are on site. Meanwhile, 5 other fires of note are burning in other parts of the province, and weather remains a worry.
Hotter temperatures and drier, in terms of humidity. So, we'll be seeing it picking up again.
With residents desperate to return home, uncertainty lingers with more heat and humidity on the way. Anita Bathe, CBC News, Vancouver.
We've also gotten an update on the response to that Keremeos fire. The Okanagan-Similkameen Regional District says hundreds of crew members are working around the clock to prevent the spread and protect structures.
And it's really stringing out people and equipment and putting in containment lines on every flank of the fire that we can. We do have a good contingent of people at this point. Like, again, we're almost at 400 firefighters, spreading people around the fire in ways that are safe. Some areas are hard to get to, and if the fire flares up, it could trap our folks. So doing it wherever we can, trying to connect dots and really build a continuous line around this thing that we can then work to just, again, stop the advance of the things.
Fire officials are encouraging people nearby the fire to leave if they've been ordered to do so. The century-old Eagle Pass lookout cabin in Shuswap has been gutted by fire. Originally constructed in 1922 as CP Rail's fire lookout station, the cabin had been long popular with hikers. Vernon resident Jason Reddick did the 2-hour hike up on Tuesday. He spoke to CBC's Daybreak South and describes what he found.
I was expecting to see just a cool fire lookout that they have around BC. There's one on Silver Star and various spots you can hike to. So between the 360-degree views and that, just kind of a neat spot that if you want to camp or just hang out, where people put a lot of time and effort into. Just a kind of a cool destination point. When we got there, I was like, because my friend Nathan Guthrie, who was with, had been there before, and I'm like, are you sure that's it? As we're getting closer, he's like, yeah, that's it. And then we see there's no roof. There's just the rock walls and some charred remains and charred beams, and a little spot in the front corner still even on fire. And so we're like, uh-oh, this burned last night. It has some walls of rock and concrete, looks like, and yeah, there are a few beams that are totally charred, but the whole roof was, because it was all timber, was burned down to ashes as well, and yeah, just completely demolished aside from the little spot. So I'm part of some hiking sites online, and so we post about it afterwards, and I knew people had been there because of posts from before, and then people posted more photos. They're like, we were literally there yesterday, and so they put some photos on the site too that showed, yeah, there it was standing yesterday. So sometime during the night it had burned.
Oh, I hadn't seen that. Those last shots are incredible. That was Vernon resident Jason Redick speaking to CBC's Daybreak South about Eagle Pass Lookout Cabin in Shuswap, which has been destroyed by a fire. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe is here now. And Joe, you've been watching closely, obviously, the fire situation near Caramios. Now things are meant to warm up. That must have people pretty worried.
You're right, Anita. We're now getting into our traditional summer fire cycle amplified by climate change. We're seeing those hot, dry periods with a ridge ends with cooler temperatures and thunderstorms, and then the next hot and dry period builds up again. So let me show you the current fire danger. We are just coming out of those gusty winds, lightning strikes, and cooler temperatures. So here's where we're at after the break in the heat. Today's fire danger showing a big swath of the province at low to very low. But you can see we didn't quite get the rain in the South Okanagan, parts of the Kootenays, even South Vancouver Island, still seeing pockets of high to extreme. Now that will build up again very quickly over the next 4 to 5 days. Right now, temperatures not quite hitting the 30-degree mark, and that's the only saving grace when we see an end to the high temperatures, is that cool temperatures do help firefighting efforts, but that new ridge of high pressure, we'll see those 30-degree temperatures build in tomorrow. And you can see that snapshot on the satellite and radar. Not much to speak of. We've lost our showers as that steady but warm ridge of high pressure moves in. So forecasts hitting the 30s for Saturday, mid-30s for Sunday. And look at that as you put your eyes towards the interior. Monday, high 30s. And yes, that does mean the South Coast here in Vancouver, we are also getting into a bit of a heat wave. I wouldn't be surprised if we see heat warnings issued once again for southern British Columbia for Monday into early next week. Anita, the good news with this heat wave, not as long as last one. We saw 7 days of that heat wave last time. This one about 4 days, but I'll break it down coming up.
Okay, that is good news for sure. We'll talk to you soon, Joe. Thanks.
You're welcome.
After more than a month in hospital, one of the officers hurt in a shootout outside a bank in Saanich has returned home. Just after 2 o'clock, officers lined the exit of the Royal Jubilee Hospital to warmly welcome the officer. A second officer is still under care recovering. The two were injured during a gunfight with brothers from Duncan in June. The long-awaited verdict in the Amanda Todd cyberbullying case is one step closer to coming down. The jury has started deliberations looking at whether a Dutchman should be found guilty of harassment and extortion of the Coquitlam teenager who died by suicide in 2012. Mira Baines has more from court on the story that's made international headlines and a warning some of the details may be disturbing.
The verdict is now in the hands of the jury after Justice Martha Devlin spent most of the day in BC Supreme Court going over final instructions with the jury members. During the 2-month trial, a Crown prosecutor argued teen Amanda Todd had been the victim of a persistent campaign of online sextortion. Aidan Coban, a 44-year-old Dutchman, is accused of harassing and extorting Todd over 3 years before her death at 15 years old. She died by suicide in 2012 after posting a video on YouTube saying she had been blackmailed by an online predator.
I hope with all my heart that I'm going to hear guilty 5 times on all 5 counts.
Amanda's mother, Carol Todd, has become an advocate against cyberbullying since her daughter's death.
We can certainly be the voice for her and let her stories continue to be heard so that we can make sure that nothing like this happens again. And as I said, her story won't bring her back, but it can save others.
The Crown is claiming Coban was behind more than 20 anonymous online accounts that repeatedly harassed and extorted Todd for sexually explicit photos and videos. His defense lawyer argued that there was no evidence that definitively links Coban to the online accounts and that devices seized at his home didn't necessarily belong to him. Coban has pleaded not guilty to extortion, harassment, and communication with a young person to commit a sexual offense and possessing child pornography. The judge told the jury to take extra care with statements Amanda Todd made to police, her parents, and through electronic communications, since she couldn't be cross-examined during the trial. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
A major candidate running to be mayor of Vancouver has withdrawn from the race. John Cooper had been running to replace Kennedy Stewart for more than a year, but with 2 months to go until the election, John says he's had second thoughts. In a statement posted to Twitter, he says he was grateful for the opportunity to run, but is now looking forward to spending more time with his family and friends. John was named as the candidate for the Nonpartisan Association last year. Now the party says it hopes to field a new candidate before next month's deadline. Voters will head to the polls in BC's civic elections in October. Okay, well, if you're a driver anywhere in this province, really, you're likely seeing relief at the gas pump as prices are going down. Today, prices in Metro Vancouver dipped to $1.82. That's a drop of more than 40 cents since the start of June. Experts say there are multiple factors behind the dip, including a decline in the price of oil and less demand in the international and local markets. They also say it's good news for drivers looking to save at the pump.
It's definitely going to feel a lot better for households who have been constrained by high prices and are up against their budget limits. So it'll give them a little bit more leeway, particularly with summer on and people going on their vacations. Nonetheless, those prices are still quite high in any historical terms.
And in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and with energy prices surging, oil and gas companies worldwide are reporting a major spike in profits. As David Thurton reports, that has sparked calls for a special tax to help people who are struggling.
At this urban farm, these greens might not have far to go, but getting them to market still hurts this grower's bottom line.
That's costly. Every time I pump gas, it's $150.
Many in Canada are feeling the financial pain after months of spiking oil and gas prices. But it's a windfall for the Canadian oil sector. In the last 3 months, Canadian oil giant Suncor says it earned nearly $4 billion, quadruple what it made the same time last year.
I urge all governments to tax these excessive profits.
The United Nations Secretary General wants action to temper what he calls grotesque greed.
It is immoral for oil and gas companies to be making record profits from this energy crisis on the back of the poorest people and communities and at a massive cost to the climate.
The Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers said in a statement that the industry is already paying more, that higher commodity prices are translating into higher government take across the country. Canada is set to see a year-over-year growth of 283% in royalties. But a one-time tax on the sector is exactly what other countries are doing.
Canadians need a government that's willing to step up on their behalf and push back on these companies.
The NDP has agreed to support the Liberals passing budgets and says any extra revenues from an excess profits tax should go to families struggling. A needs-focused measure this former parliamentary budget officer backs.
Targeting temporary targeted programs for people whose budgets are being stretched, that are seeing their disposable income shrink. I think that always makes sense.
Canada's finance minister was asked about whether or not the government supports a so-called windfall tax. Chrystia Freeland did not comment about that, but said the government is raising taxes on various sectors. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
BC's job situation continues to be red hot. The province added nearly 15,000 full-time jobs last month, with unemployment remaining at a historically low rate of just 4.7%. Also of note, the sheer number of people moving to the province. Nearly 24,000 people moved here in the first quarter of 2022. That's the highest first quarter gain in more than 60 years. The job situation isn't rosy all around. BC-based furniture company Article is laying off 17% of its staff. That's more than 200 workers in Vancouver. The CEO says demand surged during the pandemic, but has slowed since then. The company focuses extensively on online sales and says that consumer demand has simply dried up and that an anticipated permanent shopping shift online has not happened. Across Canada, there has been an economic downturn with job losses recorded for a second straight month. Still, the unemployment rate stays at historic lows. Stats Canada points to a shortage of healthcare workers, but as Anita Bathe reports, many other sectors are struggling to fill positions too.
There's a goal many Canadian businesses are finding tough to meet: hire more workers.
It's not just the airline industry, everyone's fighting for the same group of people.
Arvin Nagulis is holding daily job fairs, trying to fill positions to clean and refuel aircraft. His recruiters have been busy as airlines ramp up rapidly to meet skyrocketing demand.
That presents a lot of challenges to be able to recruit, to train, to get the right people.
Hotels and restaurants are desperate for workers as post-pandemic business and leisure travel booms.
It's become certainly increasingly competitive in terms of attracting talent. Our demand has grown exponentially.
So where did July's job losses come from? The public sector, and especially service industries, retail and wholesale trade, healthcare and education. Some of the decline can also be explained by a surge in retirements. Last month saw many older women exit the workforce.
I think we saw delayed retirements through the pandemic. You know, who wanted to retire when you couldn't travel? And now we're seeing those numbers ramp up.
Still, this is the tightest labor market in decades. There are almost 1 million positions open across the country. Wages are rapidly rising, up another 5% last month. Experts say Canada's challenge is not a lack of jobs. It's a lack of workers.
We have to think about longer-term structural issues like what is the demographic growth? What is immigration going to add to our ability to grow our workforce?
Those doing the hiring at Canada's national exhibition are confident they can meet their hiring goals.
We had over 1,000 people very early lining up, ready to go. We have hired over 750 people.
Good news for young job seekers hoping to work the midway for the first time in 2 years.
Just to get some money as well as just like have a good fun time.
After months of driving full speed ahead, Canada's jobs market appears to be slowing slightly. But experts say amid low unemployment and higher wages, policymakers will continue hiking interest rates next month. Anita Bathe, CBC News, Toronto.
Okay, we're taking you to English Bay now. A big update on that infamous barge. Removal is finally starting, but it is expected to take several weeks. Our Michelle Gassoub hit the beach to see what people are saying about the end of an era.
Well, the day is finally here. Vancouver's red behemoth, the famous barge, is coming down. Now, it's been here since November 15th, 2021, during that famous atmospheric river when it washed up. And since then, it's become somewhat of a tourist attraction. It even got its own sign. Now, some people love the barge, some people hate the barge, but no matter what you think about it, it seems like everyone in Vancouver has something to say.
It's been here a really long time. It's kind of ugly.
It looks really welcoming and inviting. No, it looks like it's not supposed to be there.
I'm going to be happy to see it gone, but it was fun while it lasted, you know?
I love it. I think it's fantastic.
What do you love about it?
It's you don't see that kind of thing anywhere.
We didn't pay any rent, and I pay a lot of money to live here, so hopefully the next tenant on the beach will pay a little bit more and, you know, pay its share.
Now, the city says this operation could take several weeks because, one, the barge is just so big, and two, they need to be very careful to not disrupt that very delicate marine environment underneath the barge. So if you want to come down and say your goodbyes, you still have several weeks at the end of this month. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver, by the barge.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not sad to see it go. It's the end of an era indeed. It's also time for it to go. It is also time for the Abbotsford Air Show. That starts tonight with a big absence. No snowbirds for the first time since 1971, but there is still plenty to see and do. In fact, today, Susanna De Silva is showing us some of the action from the air.
When I got sunglasses on, I got my mind made up, and I'm living life just for fun. Don't try to mess with me, don't try to bring me down, because I got a new attitude, and I'm bringing it back to town. I'm gonna pick you up because I'm feeling high. Gonna take it to the limit, babe.
Yeah, so we're going to go in the aircraft, we're going to attach our seatbelt, climb at 13,000 feet. We're going to be attached together, the ramp's going to be down, we're going to walk all the way off for free fall. We're going to have a nice little arch position, about a minute of free fall, then we're going to deploy a parachute and come land safely.
All right, how was that?
The greatest thing ever. I mean, having kids, awesome. This is amazing. Awesome.
Thank you,
Let's do it again. Let's do it again.
Yeah, let's go back up. Yeah, so before every jump, we drop what we call wind drift indicators. Just a big roll of colored paper, biodegradable, and it just shows us the drift of the winds, how strong the winds are to adjust our spot for our dropping there. We like to do our performance in front of the crowd, in front of people, being able to talk with them. It's something really special that we look forward to, and it's a good thing to be back here. We're all really happy.
After the break, we speak to a filmmaker about his journey discovering his roots by walking in his father's shoes. That's coming up. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. A car left sitting for years in a grassy lot behind a house in Winnipeg has become a blight on nearby properties, a neighbor says. How the car got there isn't known, but why it hasn't been removed is also a mystery. Holly Carrick investigates.
And it's in pretty sad shape. I don't know what the mileage is.
The tires are flat, wheels sunk into the ground.
Pretty flashy-looking little car. It's caught my eye. But the first few times I saw it, the grass was up almost to the windows, and the tires are all flat. The exterior is completely tarnished. It hasn't. The plates on it are 10 years old.
Michael Gillespie represents a company that bought a home on Centennial Street in April. The red two-door Eagle Talon sits across the back lane.
We spoke to the original owner of the home which we purchased, and they had no idea who owned it. It had been there sort of for as long as they could remember.
The car can be seen in the same spot on Google Street View going back several years. Here it is in 2016 and 2015 and 2014.
It looks like perhaps it was stolen and abandoned. That's my first thought.
The lot where the car sits is an old railway line. It doesn't have an address and it's registered as private property. CBC tried to contact the landowner but didn't get a reply.
Gillespie says he's reported the car to the city's 311 service twice, asking for it to be declared derelict under city bylaws. Both times, he says his complaint was closed without much explanation.
They argued with me whether it was a derelict car, which is beyond my belief.
A spokesperson for the city says bylaw officers are investigating whether it can be deemed derelict. According to the bylaw, there are 3 criteria. The vehicle is not operational and is rusted, wrecked, or dismantled, is not insured or doesn't have a valid license plate attached, and is entirely or partially outside of a building. In June, City Council amended the bylaw to make it easier for the city to remove derelict cars. Councillor Janice Lukes pushed for the changes.
We live in a city, in an urban environment, and we're trying to, have sort of some level of neighborhood livability. And dead vehicles in the middle of a field is not conducive to positive neighborhood livability.
Gillespie says he's all but given up that anything will be done.
I've dealt with the bylaw people in the past, and I have no faith in them.
Regardless of who it belongs to or why it's there, he wants it gone. Holly Carrick, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Welcome back. We're looking now at a new documentary. It involves Manny Mahal, who grew up not knowing a whole lot about his father, and really that seemed just fine. But when his mother died tragically in a car accident, the cultural gap between Manny and his dad seemed like a chasm. So Manny decided he needed to know more. That's how his film was born. Take a look.
When I was growing up, you hear people, oh, they're going on a plane, right? We used to think of, they're living up on the sky somewhere, right? You don't know if there's another land. You think, oh my God, they take the airplane, they must be up there somewhere.
You proud of your life, Dad?
Aren't you?
I was actually surprised when my dad asked me if I was proud of his life. Not because of the question itself, but because I didn't have an answer for him. How could I be proud of a life that I knew nothing about? Let me quickly summarize what I do know about my dad. He hates stuff.
So much garbage.
He sleeps all the time. And every now and then, he likes to remind me that his favorite son is actually
your brother.
And whenever I did ask him about his life back in India where he came from, he would just say,
hot.
That's it. And I basically spend my entire life in freezing cold ice rinks in Canada. Because I was born here. I was raised completely Canadian. I played hockey as a kid. I was one of the only Punjabi students in my whole school. And now I work in Vancouver in film and television. I am the first person in my entire family to be any of those things. I am living a life that my father could never have dreamed of. But that means he's lived a life that I can never relate to. So maybe this cultural gap between us was inevitable, but we just didn't need to worry about it when my mom was around. But now it's just me and my dad left in this house by ourselves. And I don't think I can move forward in my life if my father is still a stranger to me. So I'm gonna learn everything about my dad's life by doing the only thing I know how to do. Make a movie about him. And he's absolutely thrilled that I'm doing this.
I was born in a small village named Mahal in Punjab, India.
Growing up in a farming village then, what were your average days like?
We used to brush, but not with a brush. They used to use some sort of take the branch of the tree.
Wait, what?
And that's how in India, that's the best thing actually you can do. And you brush with the little stick.
With a tree branch?
Tree branch, and yeah, there's certain trees, yeah.
This is crazy to me, Dad.
Well, that's India for you. The day was August 13, 1977. Can you believe that?
August 13, 1977, baby.
Yep.
What was it like when you first saw Vancouver?
Vancouver was awful. I hated it here. It rained all the time. It was cold. Then I'm thinking, why I'm here? Why I came, right? I wanted to go to college here, but it was too expensive. And I couldn't work under my tourist visa, and that was about to expire. If I did, I would have to go back to India to be another farmer.
Oh man, so what did you do?
I only had one option left.
As I was listening to all my dad's stories, I realized I couldn't imagine walking in his shoes. Unless I did. Let's go meet Mom. That's when you knew she was the one. Right, Pops?
What the hell is this? Give me that jacket. I came up here and I was only 21 that time, and they were all sitting here staring at me. So I said, Sat Sri Akal to every one of them. Then I sat on this chair like a showpiece, and that was it.
Wait, you didn't talk to Mom?
No.
Did Mom talk to you?
No.
Did anybody talk to anybody?
Not really.
What a romantic story.
Oh, you don't like my story?
Well, I mean, I don't like it. It's just, it could have been a little more romantic.
Yeah, but I told you exactly what had happened.
All right, that's fair, you're right. We're making a documentary.
Why your mustache is fake then?
Thanks, Pops. Cut there, I'm done with this.
And my hair was wavy.
Okay, I got it. You're a beautiful, beautiful man.
Very natural.
Okay, so that's just a sneak peek at the film. It's now streaming on CBC Gem, but Manny is with me now in studio. Manny, you literally walked in your dad's footsteps. Can you expand a little bit more on why you wanted to do that?
Well, at first, I just kind of did these interviews with my dad, and when I was playing them back and listening to them, I just realized some of these are so funny, and some of these are just so dramatic that they kind of deserved a bit of cinematic treatment. So, my parents had kept all of my dad's clothing, we had a bunch of old photos, and I just put it together and decided, you know what? I'm gonna put those clothes right on and jump into these scenes.
What was the most surprising thing you found when you did that?
Honestly, it was probably the meeting of how my parents met, because I'd always kind of heard how they met through the grapevine, really didn't get a lot of details. And in my mind, I always imagined it was this amazing love at first sight moment between the two of them, that as soon as my dad saw my mom, they had a connection and that was it. And then my dad proceeded to tell me he looked at her for like 10 seconds and was like, yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a story that resonates for a lot of people in the South Asian community with arranged marriages, right? You just sit in a room and you stare at each other and then it's over. Maybe you say yes, or your parents say yes for you.
Exactly.
So, humor was a big part of this documentary, not only from you, but also your dad. How important was that in making the film?
Well, I really wanted to capture what it was like to kind of, my relationship with my father, which has always been, light roasting, you could call it. And that's the relationship that we've always had. And, my mom was a big part of that as well. One of the great things in our household that I always loved is that whenever things got difficult, we would just laugh about it. And my dad was so good at putting things in perspective for me. And I really want to capture that in the film. So there's a lot of elements in which, maybe I should have cut the camera, maybe I should have turned the camera off, but I let it play because I knew my dad would say something great, or him and I would have an interaction that would be very, very genuine.
Yeah, I think that really came across for sure. You mentioned your mom, obviously a huge part of this story. What do you think that she would think about the documentary and the fact that you two did this together?
I mean, I think it would mean so much to her if she had seen how close my father and I have become. She would definitely complain that she wasn't in it enough. That's how my mom kind of is. So that'd be the first thing she would say. But at the end of the day, I think she would just be proud of my father the most, because my father was quite a stoic man in my whole childhood. I was the fast talker. My mom talks twice as fast as I could ever do. And my dad just sat there and took all this every day in the living room. And for him now to kind of tell me his story and be such a nice, open person in telling me his story and telling our whole family story is something that I think would have really made my mom proud of him the most.
Manny, thank you. And your film is streaming on CBC Gem.
Thank you, Anita.
Coming up, tensions are rising between China and the U.S. after the House Speaker's visit to Taiwan. The crumbling relationship between the two superpowers next.
Simon Fraser is a true instant university, conceived and built in a breathtaking 24 months. Its fresh architecture attracted world attention and students. In 3 years, the enrollment has reached over 6,000. There isn't enough classroom space. Trailers are being used as classrooms. Students say they can't take the courses they want. The cafeterias are designed to feed half the student body, and there are only about 100 seats in the library. But congestion and the curriculum aren't the only problems. Simon Fraser operates on the trimester system. Pressure builds up when there's no cooling off period. The administration has announced plans to expand the student lounge and eating facilities. But will it be in time to head off trouble, like the crisis in early June when the Canadian Association of University Teachers censured the university, in effect recommending that teachers stay away from Simon Fraser? The students almost struck at that time. In fact, a vote favored a boycott, but it failed to pass by a 2/3 majority. Now Student Society President Martin Loney says time has all but run out.
From our point of view, we've known for a long time that something is seriously wrong at Simon Fraser, that it's not a democratic university, that it's a university which was set up by the Bennett government as a means of getting votes from the surrounding area, that it's a university which has not been concerned with academic excellence, but has been concerned, if anything, with training people to fill corporation positions, that it's a university which is being very badly administered by a board of governors which consists almost exclusively of corporation lawyers and businessmen.
That's a sweeping condemnation of the whole administration and the university. Now, what are your answers to the problems?
I think one of the immediate answers is that the government has to be prepared to put its money where its mouth is and to do more than just talk about higher education and build showpieces on top of Burnaby Mountain.
The president left during the crisis in June. Since then, there have been 2 temporary acting presidents and 1 acting president. He's the current office holder, Dr. Kenneth Strand.
The problem is to avoid making concessions to power while simultaneously bringing about needed reforms. And I think the first step to distinguish these two will be to try to get the discussion out of a power context into a discussion which is proper in an academic environment, that is a confrontation of ideas rather than a confrontation of power.
Though improvements have been announced by the new administration, it may not be enough to satisfy the more radical elements on campus. So if there is going to be a boycott, a strike, or even violence, it depends on how many radical students there are and how many reasonable and responsible ones. A sobering assessment of that balance and of the future comes from Martin Loney, who calls this the most radical university in English-speaking Canada. Sheldon Turcott, CBC News, on the campus of Simon Fraser University.
China says it's suspending cooperation with the United States on a number of issues, including climate change. This follows a visit to Taiwan by U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, something China calls a provocation. The CBC's Julia Wang tells us Beijing has also announced sanctions against Pelosi.
A statement from China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the sanctions cover Pelosi and her immediate family. Now, it did not give specifics about what exactly they will be or what they will look like, and they are considered mainly symbolic. Now, China is pushing back even further. This morning, it said it's canceling or suspending dialogue with the United States on issues ranging from climate change to military relations to maritime safety. That move is meant to punish the U.S. for allowing the trip to happen in the first place. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister weighed in on the situation earlier today.
We call on China to calm down its rhetoric. Of course, the visit of the U.S. top legislator, Nancy Pelosi, cannot be used as a pretext to heighten tension, to destabilize the region.
Relations between the U.S. and China have spiraled. A senior Chinese embassy official says the U.S. must rectify its mistakes after Pelosi's visit, saying it is the only way out of this crisis between the two countries. China is holding unprecedented military drills around Taiwan. It's a show of force and a display of confidence. China reports missiles have been fired over the island, and Taiwan has also reported several ships and aircraft from China briefly crossed the Taiwan Strait median line this morning. It says these deliberate moves seriously damage the status quo, and they're seen as harassing Taiwan's water and airspace. Today, the U.S. Secretary of State called the actions provocative and wants Beijing to back down.
There is no justification for this extreme, disproportionate, and escalatory military response.
The military drills being conducted by China are expected to run until Sunday. Julia Wang, CBC News, Washington.
U.S. conspiracy theorist Alex Jones has been ordered to pay more than $45 million in punitive damages to the parents of one of the children killed in the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting. Jones had falsely claimed the 2012 massacre was a hoax. The ruling comes after an order to pay more than $4 million in damages yesterday after the two-week trial in Austin, Texas. 20 children and 6 staff were shot to death at an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut. Israeli forces launched a wave of airstrikes today across Gaza, hitting targets they say are linked to the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement. Palestinian local officials say at least 10 people were killed, including a senior militant commander, and dozens more were hurt in the attack. Israel says it was targeting the Islamic Jihad militant group in response to an imminent threat. The airstrikes come after days of escalating tensions following the arrest of a Palestinian militant leader this week. Islamic Jihad is vowing retaliation. Well, playing with extra support, we look into how improvements to sports bras can improve athletic performance next. At 6:40, you are looking at a live shot of Iceland, where it is in the middle of the night, a volcano there. Quiet for a bit, but back active. We'll tell you all about that, and we will look at our upcoming heat as well, coming up.
Lemmings are an essential part of the Arctic food chain. Animals like the snowy owl can depend on them for up to 98% of their diet. Yet every 4 years or so, lemmings do something super inconvenient.
Their populations crash to near extinction levels, and then explode again a few years later.
This phenomenon is so odd that even after nearly a century of research, we still don't really know what's going on.
For example, back in the 1500s, a scientist tried to explain these fluctuations by saying that lemmings fell out of the sky in stormy weather, and then died suddenly when the grass sprouted in the spring.
That's it. That's the whole theory. The 1500s were a wild time.
A more modern lemming myth that you may have heard of is that lemmings will jump off cliffs in mass suicides for no particular reason.
Believe it or not, this myth was established by an Academy Award-winning documentary from the 1950s.
The producers of the film forced some lemmings off of a cliff into a river and filmed the entire experience, claiming this inexplicable behavior as fact.
This is what scientists call lying. But even after all this time, people still don't fully understand the boom and bust cycle of lemmings.
This time around, it's either going to be Pakistan or Canada. I'm sure, though, if Ahmad Desi wins it, he of Punjabi heritage, then India will claim a little bit of that. Anwar, who defeated Mandir Kuna in the semis, and Desi, who saw off Grewal.
Oh, look at the underhook here. Something's going to happen here. He's going to look for the advantage again. Just flicks him off to the side. He picks up 2 points for that and 2 points for the turnover there. Flying into the lead here. Just needs 3 points here.
We're only a minute and a half into this final. Usually finals are more cagey affairs. This one's been wide open.
Yeah, look at that 2-on-1 there. Just, and now for the Firemen's. Well, he's going to hold on to the leg there, hoping that Anwar doesn't get the advantage, and now he's turned him. And he's trying to pin the shoulders here to finish it all off. And he goes up to the net there, and he takes him down, and he gets it. He gets the pin, and that was brilliant. Well, Anwar never got off go, did he really? Because Desi just looked so much stronger and came out full of confidence. Knew exactly what he wanted. He made the pass first of all, and then just opened up the account and built on it. And
there we see the maple leaf.
Yeah, well, my wife will be screaming at home. Canadian through and through, and so are my girls. So she'll be really happy that
In the year 2050, how will BC look? From agriculture to cities, how will climate change life? Don't miss 2050 Degrees of Change, a CBC Vancouver original podcast, now available.
A spectacular sight is lighting up the night skies near Iceland's capital. The massive volcano began erupting yesterday on a mountain near Reykjavik. Many people flocked to the site to see the bright orange lava flows and plumes of smoke spewing into the mountainside. That's despite authorities urging people to avoid the sparsely populated area. Now, it's situated near the country's main airport, so it's being closely monitored by officials. But currently, there's been no disruptions to flights. The peninsula is a seismic hotspot that saw an eruption on the same mountain last year. Johanna Wagstaffe is here now. And Johanna, those photos, those images are just absolutely incredible to see.
Yeah, and to think that that is currently happening right now as we speak. I was looking into this region, Anita, and as you mentioned, we just saw an eruption last year in the same part. This peninsula likely reactivated after about 800 years of being dormant. Yeah, you're looking at shots of it right now, and likely to see this activity now continue for decades. So we'll have to keep an eye on this region of Iceland. I think things have fired up, so to speak, for the long haul. Speaking of firing up, I want to show you the current temperatures across all of North America. I thought we'd do a little check-in on where the heat is, and it's really confined to the Mississippi Valley, southern U.S. states. So we're actually getting a break from that heat across most of Canada. You can see mid-30s right now down and through Texas, but comfortable 20s for most of Canada. Things are heating up, though, for us, as we mentioned earlier on. High pressure moving back in. The sinking air around a high pressure means stable, so not a lot of cloud cover or rain or lightning strikes for that matter, but this is when we'll see heat really start to build. So we're talking some of the hottest air with this heat wave Sunday through Tuesday. I want to pause you on Wednesday because that's when this ridge that you can see sort of defined by those oranges and reds start to move east. And anytime we see a ridge break down and move off after a heat wave, that's when we're worried about new fire starts. That's really what we've been dealing with the past couple of days in the southern interior. That's why those erratic winds have really grown a lot of our wildfires of note. So we'll have to keep an eye on next Wednesday when this ridge of high pressure breaks down. And until then, heat is going to be the story right across southern BC. Those temperatures you see there, that's for YVR, so by the water. Inland will be hitting the 30s. In Metro Vancouver starting Sunday. So starting to see that heat build Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So really just a 3-4 day heat wave stretch. It's amazing how our context changes. We had to get through 7 days of 30-degree temperatures last week, Anita. So 3 days doesn't sound like much, but it's enough that we'll likely see the heat warnings and issued for most of southern BC, really starting Sunday into Monday, and then keeping an eye on Wednesday for that big shift in the weather pattern, Anita.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Canada's 13 regional hockey federations are demanding a detailed action plan and a meeting with Hockey Canada by the end of November to address their concerns. They say it's an essential condition to be met before they pay their dues in December. This, of course, is linked to criticism of Hockey Canada over its handling of sexual assault allegations made against players, including in 2018. The federations want details of how Hockey Canada handled that incident and how it will handle allegations in the future. Well, sports bras are in the spotlight after the soccer star who scored England's winning Euro goal revealed hers while celebrating. It turns out Chloe Kelly and the Lionesses had hidden support in their bras. And as Katie Nicholson shows us, it may have helped their performance on the pitch.
In this game-winning goal celebration, a performance secret revealed.
Thank you, everyone that came out to support us.
It wasn't just an entire nation supporting the Lionesses, but special sports bras and the expertise of a team of scientists.
If we have a mass and it's projected right out in front, then that's going to change your whole body mechanics, could potentially make you less efficient, could make you have to work harder.
For 17 years, Professor Joe Wakefield-Skur has been studying how the right bra can make a big difference.
They can improve your breathing frequency, they can lower your heart rate, so they can make you more efficient. We've seen reductions in muscle activity, so they can actually help reduce fatigue.
On this East London pitch, this 21-year veteran
Let's get him up, get him up, get him up!
knows all too well how the wrong sports bra can ruin a game.
You look really uncomfortable, you end up holding yourself in funny positions. Maybe you don't want to run, if you've got a bigger chest, it can start to get painful.
She's happy to see the women's game get a little help from science.
Beckham was famous, wasn't he, for having the extra detail on his boots. So why can we not now, as women, have science positively use it in our performance? It's such a benefit.
That bra-bearing celebration did more than boost the science of sports bras. Department store John Lewis reported a 130% increase in online searches for sports bras and a 15% bump in sales this week. Perhaps the last time a sports bra had this big a moment was in 1999 as Brandi Chastain netted the U.S.'s World Cup winning goal. "I see you," she tweeted to Kelly Sunday night. "Well done." Once a taboo topic, sports bras are now in the spotlight, and that's especially encouraging for women's health.
We did a big survey a number of years ago where we found that the breast was a barrier to exercise for 17% of women.
A barrier she hopes more women will now be able to play through. In the right sports bra, of course. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, London.
Well, it's been many moons since humankind last landed on lunar ground. Now NASA is looking to return. We tell you about the vessel that could take astronauts to the moon again next.
Being accepted to me feels really amazing.
It's been something that staff have been working on, for a few years now. They discovered the technology, and we're basically waiting for an opportunity to find funding to support it. And it's based on the wire that goes into the ground or gets taped down to the floor. As long as you're standing in it in a square or a circle so that it is a loop, you will be able to use it. You're getting the sound that everybody else is getting, but directly from the soundboard to your hearing aids. You can turn it up, turn it down. It's going to be more clear. It's going to sound great. You're going to have an experience similar to everybody else who's at the festival.
Those who are trying the new technology will be putting on some headphones or earbuds, and that helps reduce any background noise or static or anything, so they can make sure to enjoy the music better. Back to green. But for people with autism, that's kind of a little bit different, because you need some special equipment to make sure it's not too loud or not too quiet. Just be perfectly just right. People have plug their ears or with earmuffs on, but I think this new technology at the Regina Folk Festival should be the perfect solution.
What Regina Folk Fest has started doing is awesome, and will hopefully lead to other, music venues implementing the same technology. I think it's definitely making the space more inclusive. It's making it more neurodivergent friendly as well. Obviously it was made for deaf people, but it's benefiting the autistic community now as well. So I think, having the true inclusion is just where everyone can come, everyone's welcome, and everyone can be included.
It goes like this.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Cinematheque with Stephen Quinn at a gala on August 19th. Enjoy prize draws, culinary delights, and more. Get tickets today at thecinematheque.ca and never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
Humanity is eager to head back to the moon. NASA says the Artemis 1 launch set for the end of the month is good to go. Now, it's the first in a series of missions that will eventually lead to exploration on the moon and on Mars. CBC senior science reporter Nicole Mortellaro tells us about the mission.
The Artemis 1, our first planned launch attempt will be August 29th, with planned splashdown of October the 10th.
Anticipation is building for humanity's return to the moon. NASA's ambitious program, called Artemis, will begin on August 29, when an uncrewed capsule will blast off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida and head towards the moon, where it will orbit for 42 days. Artemis 1, as it's called, is made up of a massive 32-story rocket. On top sits the Orion capsule, which will house astronauts in future missions. And a Canadian astronaut, who is yet to be named, will take a trip around the moon in Artemis 2, planned for 2025. But this isn't just about the moon.
When we think about Artemis, we focus a lot on the moon, but I just want everybody in the room and everybody watching to remember, our sights are not set on the moon. Our sights are set clearly on Mars. And everything that you're thinking about today, everything that we're going to do on Artemis 1 leads to Artemis 2, which leads to Artemis 3 when we hope to have humans on the surface of the moon. But Artemis 3 is leading to the rest of the Artemis program. The first woman, the first person of color on the surface of the moon, and then the first humans tracking out to Mars and putting our footsteps in building science laboratories and inhabiting another planet.
NASA is busily preparing for big crowds anticipated on the Space Coast to launch a new era of moon exploration. Nicole Mortellaro, CBC News, Toronto.
And another really awesome thing, a 13-year-old from a Montreal suburb is gearing up for a big challenge this fall. Despite her young age, Hanine Youssef will be starting university. And as Kobina Aduro found out, she's not the only precocious one in her family.
Like most 13-year-olds, Hanine Youssef is interested in things like video games and stuffed animals.
You seem a little irresponsible.
But Hanine isn't your average 13-year-old. This fall, she's starting a bachelor's degree in English literature at Concordia University.
I'm really excited because I feel like I'm going to fit in there. I feel like it's the right environment for me to, not only for my studies, but emotionally because I'm advanced in both fields.
Henian's mother couldn't be more proud and has no worries about her daughter attending school with adults.
She is not only academically advanced, but socially and emotionally. She knows what's right from wrong. She can judge for herself. She actually advocates for herself a lot.
Henian was advanced from an early age, skipping both grades 4 and 6. Since she arrived in Montreal 2 years ago, she's been doing online school and completed her last 4 grades of high school in 1 year.
I always felt more like ahead of what I was being taught in school, so I went with that and I skipped and found the right education level for me. Oh my God,
Believe it or not, she's not the first in her family to start university early. Her sister started at Concordia at 16 and her brother at 15.
Because I know that this is what she wants, and I'm really excited to see her, kind of do something that she is excited for and passionate about.
It's probably one of the proudest moments of my life to see this happen, yeah. Because she's always working hard, she's always studying, like she deserves this, yeah.
The 3 kids will be joining their mother for study sessions at the kitchen table. She's also taking a bachelor's degree in finance. And for Henian, getting ready for university wasn't enough.
My goal is to own my own business in the future. I've started a graphic design business on the side, and I also started a food blogging page on social media as well.
She's also working on a book. She's hoping to have it finished by the end of the year. Kubino Duro, CBC News, Vaudreuil-Dorion.
A bachelor's degree in English, a business. Wow. That's all I have to say is wow. We leave you with that tonight. Thanks so much for being with us on CBC Vancouver News at 6. Have a wonderful weekend.